just, Minister, a few questions in relation to your presentation there. And this might seem like a strange question, but what is the primary reason for assessment? Like, is it for access to supports and services within the CDNT or primary care, or is it to get into a school that's appropriate? Because I'm hearing a lot where, again, you've said in your speech there that people can be referred by their GP, or they can actually be self-referred by parents can refer children to a CDNT, and that they don't need the statutory ON for services. And I think a lot of parents accept that and would be happy to, if they were getting the services, and if they had an ongoing multidisciplinary team assessing them. But unfortunately, the school system is insisting, because there are insufficient places within the school system, they are insisting on an AON.
Deputy, for that question, and it's a really valid question, and to be honest with you, it's part of your recommendations number 19 about a clear plan must be communicated to parents regarding the situation with AONs going forward, including timelines, information and what measures are being taken, budgetary and otherwise. And then on the next page then there is the other piece in relation to point number 25 of recommendations. An education campaign should be launched to provide parents, caregivers and children with accessible information about the AON process. So to be very fair to the Department of Education, I think it's 2 years ago now, they removed the criteria around an AON for children with additional needs for accessing mainstream education. You do need to have an AON to access a special class. So that's the caveat there. To access services, we always say in the HSE, when I say we, the HSE say to access services, you don't need an assessment to access services. You have a statutory right to an assessment to access but you don't need to have that assessment to access services. And there is the other piece where, and I suppose it's very important to say this, in actually accessing financial supports, you do actually need to have a diagnosis to get the domiciliary carers. So we have a family, a child and parents, where there's 3 sets of different criteria, where actually the overarching umbrella of it all is, if I had assessment of need, it actually perhaps gives a quicker mechanism in getting a special class, in getting the financial support, but it doesn't say that you will get quicker interventions. In actual fact, what clinicians would prefer to be doing particularly is delivering interventions.
I know you're saying there that you have additional funding going towards CDNT's outsourcing assessments. Is there capacity in the private sector, first of all, to actually carry out the assessments? Because I'm hearing that there isn't, that parents who can afford the assessment can't actually get one because there's not enough psychologists, etc. But also, I think it's going the wrong way as well, because it's one sector where we see most people opting to go into the private sector rather than the public sector, and it's usually the other way around. Like what's the cost differential in paying someone in the private sector as opposed to paying or giving a further incentive to employ someone in the CDNT? I
suppose really nobody wants any child waiting, so that is why extra funding has been sourced, and that's why there is a twin approach. If the CDNT hasn't the capacity, or if there's long waiters and they have not met their statutory requirements, of course, and if you have children waiting, and in some cases, we have to be honest, waiting up against 2.5 years since the last backlog was cleared, Deputy, it is incumbent on us to find whatever solution is available to assure that. So if we put that aside, and I only talked to the head of disability, Bernard O'Regan, before today's meeting, and in actual fact is, in 4 years ago when we did this, when we had COVID, and we managed to clear the 6,500 backlog, at that time it was a different environment. The environment was, a lot of it was done online. So a child could have had assessments online. It was part and parcel of the suite. What they gave out about then was they weren't able to support or see the child in their environment of education. So we've gone completely away from providing some of that assessment online piece, which can speed up the process. The other piece in relation to it as well is that Some of our CD&T staff, some are deciding actually to leave it and to go into the private space to actually, because they feel there is a more flexible option for them.
CDNTs are not functioning at the moment because of the staffing level. And by the way, the last census was carried out in 2022. What about the 2023 one? We were promised that would be published there a few months ago. I know it was held up with there was a dispute but I'm just wondering when that is and what the figures are like. Are you aware of what?
It's up 3%.
Okay.
So it's not like I could say it's up massive.
Yeah, but I mean the recruitment within the CDNTs. I mean, it's very, very slow because there's a number of months since you informed me about that recruitment drive, and still people don't seem to be in situ, and there's still huge vacancies. And then I talked to parents in one session, and they said their people are applying for these positions, being offered them, but not taking them then, because all they want to do is show on the CV that they were offered a position, which is very, very difficult for everybody. So, I mean, it's just... Like, have you planned, say, to address the Section 39 pay parity issue, which is still affecting some CDNTs worse than others? But what other incentives are you putting in place to get more staff into the CDNT?
So I suppose in answer to that piece there, one of the issues that we have discovered as well is that for somebody qualifying out of college, they need to ensure for their core registration and everything until they get comfortable and have enough experience, they need to have that clinical oversight piece. Yeah. And that was a big piece, I think, when PTS was rolled out at the start. And there wasn't enough senior posts within that clinical governance piece. And different disciplines didn't hold the clinical governance, and that was a huge issue, to be honest with you, of which we're addressing at this moment in time. The clinical governance piece is being addressed. They are recruiting into the clinical governance piece, and they are working, when I say they, the HSE are working with the clinicians that would provide that. That would mean that the junior grade staff coming on has the supervision and confidence that their Kuru registration at no time would be impacted. The same way when they are looking to expand the model into therapist assistant roles as well, to have that clinical governance. Who does that risk sit with? That's a word that we've often heard, that they hold the risk. The risk will sit perhaps with the CDNT manager for the assistant therapy spaces. And in relation to the pay parity conversation, like last October was when the ends of that talks finished on it. 500 out of the 1,100 have filled up the COSI application, and I do know that the employers and the unions are back in with the WRC either Monday or Tuesday next week to look at the next round of pay negotiations in relation to the Section 39s.
Okay.